For the most part, I think that security is pretty much the same. And so all the same concerns that we have about on-premise are the same in the cloud. It's all the same stuff. We just have to make sure that we're approaching it in that fashion, right? So all the things that we've worried about over the years and we've gotten better about and matured on-prem, we can't just ignore the cloud. We now have to extend all those things to the cloud. So in many ways, yeah, we could argue there are a few different things, but most of those same controls and risks that we face, it's across both and it has to be handled properly. Yeah, so the cloud I have a love-hate love with, let's just be honest, right? There's so many great things with it that a cloud service provider is going to do better than maybe what traditional IT shops could do, without a doubt. But I get really concerned about the systemic risk of the cloud. I get really worried when there's one vulnerability that can impact then dozens or hundreds of clients, where in the traditional model, if there was a vulnerability in a product, you would have to go compromise that data center to get to that customer and the next one and the next one and the next one. So when we think about aggregation or systemic risk, the cloud gives a whole different meaning, that multi-tenant world. You need to make sure what your neighbors are up to and what that cloud service provider is doing is right for everyone, because if it gets unfortunately compromised for one client, it could lead into your world, something to be mindful of. I think my biggest concern about securing data centers is that they are changing, right? The traditional data centers change dramatically. So all the tools and the processes and everything that we have in place doesn't really extend automatically into the cloud. So now we have to revisit everything that we're doing to make sure that we do have those right tools and right partners in place, that everything that I've relied on for all my organizations and I feel comfortable about now extends out the way that we expect it to. Yeah, so I think for the most part, it depends on the organization, but a lot of companies that have been traditionally on-premise that are a little bit older with their applications and are trying to move them to the cloud, they're not just pick up, move, and put over there, right? They have to be looked at, they have to be analyzed, you have to understand how they work so that they work properly in the cloud. And I think the biggest advice is that don't forget those security elements, right? Most people just want to make sure, will the app work, yes or no? Oh, it'll work, move it. But we got to make sure that same visibility into the issues, the security concerns that we've had on premise will work in the cloud as well. I love the concept of zero trust. I have found the controversial part is that if you're an old established organization and then you basically say, hey, everything's working and all of a sudden we trust nothing, nothing works, right? So as an old school firewall guy, right, we were very much trust no one. And then we would try to build out these rule sets and these identification, authentication things that would work. It can be very hard to transition from a company that's working into that model. So I think my controversial thing is you shouldn't try to not do a zero trust environment. We have to be super smart about how the process, procedure, and then those technology partners to actually enable you to get there. Because if you sort of just want to do it and you flick the switch, it's going to be a really bad day for you and your company when a lot of things potentially could break. So that's the biggest thing of how do you transition there without causing issues and outages for the company. I mean, for me, there's two places. So I can't pick one place to start, but I think the first would be obviously, it is the network, right? I think the network tends to be the most visibility into these things, and then when you move to the cloud, you lose a lot of that visibility that traditionally you would have. I mean, people probably argue endpoints and all these sorts of things, but having your network security visibility is still key in the cloud. But for me as a vulnerability guy, I just trust no software whatsoever, right? Everything's vulnerable, there's vulnerabilities in everything, and so making software and vendors sort of earn their way onto the network and being used, that's my biggest place, software vulnerabilities.